Welcome in. I'd like to share some thoughts on what I'm going to call truth, fear, and resilience. And this is something I'd like to share in response to just what's in the social milieu these days, especially in the US, where a lot of people I work with live, as well as where I'm from. Though this may not be necessarily something that affects everyone in the world. I just want to recognize. And this is not a piece of content, video, podcast episode. The purpose is not to get political here. The purpose is to offer some ideas of how we can use moments of stress and fear and anxiety, dis-ease, to actually progress in our meditation and Dharma practice. And of course, just as all my content is, this is open to anyone, Buddhist curious, non-Buddhist, whatever. But I am aiming this a little bit more at Dharma practitioners who are trying to understand a little bit more how the mind works, how to free themselves from clinging and perpetual sort of samsaric existence and suffering, and also want to serve others, right? Of course, that's in that motivation is part of that. So yeah, and as Dharma practitioners, I feel we are aspiring, of course, not only to become free or awake for the benefit of others, but we are also aspiring to really explore and get to know the mind and to grow compassion, and I would say sort of to understand how to work in a non-biased way. And that's really challenging. I just want to say before I get into the content on truth, non-bias is really difficult to develop because sometimes we think that means non-action. And it doesn't. It just means that actually more skillful action can come out of non-bias because compassion and wisdom have room to actually develop, right? Within a given situation. And this word truth is really interesting. I have one Buddhist teacher, Zongser Khenso Rinpoche, who often says Buddhism, I'm paraphrasing, but basically says Buddhism is the pursuit of truth. It's a path trying to get down to what truth actually is. And for those who study the Dharma, this can get quite complex. And for some, it can seem very paradoxical at first because, we talk about the two truths and that those are in a unity, that there's relative truths that appear and function, yet are unfindable, and therefore we find their absolute truth. So their absolute truth exists with their fundamental, I don't know how you say it, non-findability. And that is really where freedom lies in Buddhism, seeing that and disidentifying and removing the hook of ego clinging, right? But either way, I think mainly I wanted to stay in the realm of relative truth here and understand how to use when relative truth is being undermined in the world. I mean, it's always undermined, but meaning that there's a truth in relative truth, right? It's always, if we look, we'll see it's just relative. It's changing, right? Doesn't mean it's not, there also aren't more helpful or harmful relative truths. That also can be the case, depending on the person or the moment or the period in time. But I'm not here to argue harm or help right now. I'm just sort of here to offer some food for thought of how I'm working with, especially the idea of like what to trust, meaning from what I've experienced, I think the truth has been in a process of being undermined, at least in the U.S. For a while, meaning like sort of what is the best way to for the country to go forward, what is the kindest thing to do for people, etc. And I'm not, like I said here, I'm not advocating for, I'm not getting into a us-them conversation about what is better or worse, though there is better and worse. I'm going to say that, right? There is. It's not what I'm going to talk about here. What I'd like to talk about is like how to work with when truth is being undermined, meaning when fundamentally we don't know who or what to believe, and or some of us do and we kind of choose a side. But I think there is quite a lot of people out there, they just don't know what to do because they see deception everywhere. And essentially, again, I'm going to go too much into this, but for whatever reason that's happening, it's happening. I also want to say there is something within Himalayan Buddhism where this was kind of like prophesied by one of our lineage founders, by Padmasambhava, that there would be kind of a state of mind, a sickness that would sort of take root in the minds of people during this time that would cause a lot of self-righteousness and conflict and reactivity. So, it basically comes down to the Buddhist principles of whenever we get stuck in our own ideas and beliefs and we're not willing to open the mind towards curiosity and non-bias and compassion, we can get entrenched. And again, I'm not arguing some of those views are better than others. I already established, yes, there can be that can be part of this conversation. But either way, the idea of when we get entrenched, we get stuck, is we often lose compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others. And we become biased. And this limits our view. We're not able to see more of how reality is functioning because we're looking at one myopic perspective. So this is kind of for those of you who are sick of working that way, I guess, or you don't work that way and you don't know what to do because you just see sort of like manipulation happening all the time. And of course, everybody, when we're in fear, we want to get everybody onto our team, so to speak, right? And I just don't think that's the best way to go about it. So we might have others around us that are really in fear and sort of, we're very sensitive, as I think human beings, where we pick up on other people's energies and, of course, our friends and family, but also just, the society we live in, and we're like a sponge, we soak that in, and that can cause anxiety for us. So again, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I just want to talk about what to do when we feel like, how to work with not knowing, how to work with the uncertainty of truth essentially being undermined. And again, maybe you don't believe that, but this is just kind of what I've noticed for many years. It's actually not new. I think we're kind of like, we're in a culmination of the, or the repercussions of that. I remember in the 90s, I noticed, again, this is about as political as I'm going to get here. I remember in the 90s, I was a teenager, and I remember distinctly noticing the news media changing from news to opinion and sort of bias, right? Like more extreme bias. And I remember thinking, that's strange. Why are they doing that? And then I just noticed it getting worse and worse and worse over the years. And I sort of, I've gone through many phases on that, from checking out to sort of, nowadays I actually try to get out of my silos and try to hear different people's perspectives so I can sort of form my own opinions on things. And I do that through hearing lots of different perspectives, not just one silo, which is kind of becoming hard with algorithms and stuff. But anyways, so here, obviously a repercussion when truth gets undermined for us, when we don't know what relative truth is helpful or harmful, or we feel one is more helpful than another, and we see others doing the opposite, and then we get enraged, or, like I said, a lot of anxiety or fear comes up. Fundamentally, this comes down to me like just a basic truth of life, which is inevitably we have to work with uncertainty, whether that comes in the realm of information, right? News, or an illness, or government changing and political views and political parties changing, whatever that is, it's going to happen. And eventually, we all have to come into some resolution with the death of our physical body, which I think is the biggest uncertainty for most of us. So uncertainty is just a natural part of life. And actually, in the Buddhist teachings, it's part of dukkha. And so I just want to talk to kind of those of you who are a little more serious Dharma practitioners here, or at least interested in going that way. This is an opportunity. This is an extraordinary opportunity we're living through right now. Yes, I know the world is changing really fast. It's scary. I think we're going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to change much faster than we've even seen so far. But just in my lifetime, the world has changed a lot, and this is scary. And my first go-to is compassion practice. And this is generally, I put it like this: we need to learn how to allow our heart to break open for that change, for that uncertainty, without it breaking down. So allowing the heart to break open without breaking down. And of course, as practitioners, we have so many practices to rely on. We have an abundance of practices. Actually, it's absurd, the amount of support we have, right? So if we actually work these practices and train in them and contemplate the Dharma, obviously this can provide resilience. But the kind of resilience other than that, the kind of resilience I'm advocating for allowing the heart to break open and not break down, is a resilience of being able to sit in uncertainty, to be able to sit with impermanence and change, and to become more courageous within that. Actually, I feel like there's always A or B options for solutions, and then there's like Z, or C or D or whatever, right? I think as Dharma practitioners, we have this opportunity right now. If we really lean into the actual relativity of truth, at least relative truth, that it's always changing, that it's always unreliable, and we learn to flow in that, we learn to grow compassion and wisdom in that, we have an opportunity to really serve others here, right? And if we don't take that opportunity, if we don't take it seriously, we are going to end up being overwhelmed by fear, anxiety, and aggression. I consider fear and aggression opposites of Dharma. And again, it has nothing to do with me being a good practitioner or bad practitioner, or you being a good practitioner or bad practitioner. I'm literally talking about, what do we want to feed right now? What kind of energy do you want to feed? Do you want to feed the fear, or do you want to understand the fear, right? So as Dharma practitioners, or people interested in a spiritual path, or people interested in working with the mind in a helpful way, and ultimately interested in growing compassion, we need to understand how we interact with ourselves it ends up being how we interact with others. And so if we care about the world, we need to spend a decent amount of time caring about what we feed in our mind, essentially. And of course, this comes down to what we consume. That's obvious. But that's really a side thing, meaning like for someone with a strong mind, strong compassion and wisdom and awareness, they can consume modern media all day long and not be 1 inch driven from their purpose, right? But if we're easily swayed, maybe we just don't consume for a little while. Don't consume those things that affect you. Work on your practice. Work on understanding the Buddhist teachings of dukkha, impermanence, and emptiness. Work on putting them into practice. I think the main practice is compassion, letting the heart break open without breaking down. And that not breaking down piece, for me, it heavily relates to awareness. So the training in awareness, the strengthening of that, the ability for awareness, this capacity of mind to be watchful, to host our experience, while not dissociating from it, which would be the opposite of compassion. So hosting experience, not getting hooked, but not dissociating, fully feeling. I think we can do so much good that way, because we learn how to transform that fear. We learn how to transform that sort of anxiety around uncertainty. And we ultimately find a very deep resilience, not only for ourselves, but we can share with our family and friends. And if we have a leadership role with others in our communities and country. So I again, I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm not here to argue that. I just feel we all have different roles. Some of us it might be direct action and whatever we think is the most skillful. But I really do feel like our first job is not to create more mud. Our first job is not to kick up more dust. of suffering for ourselves and others. And then from there, we try to learn how to serve and help. And in the Dharma, this always comes from, in my opinion, and my readings, understanding of Buddhism, this comes from our inner churning and work, but not to be selfish and sort of be this sort of, I don't know how I say it, dissociated meditator on a mountain. That's not at all what the Buddha was teaching. It's from our inner transformation, we actually find the wisdom, compassion, and skillful means to actually affect things in a positive way. I feel like if it's not done that way, and I just see this again and again in my own life, it's often just perpetuating suffering, right? So anyways, these are some of my views on it, on sort of the truth becoming more fluid. There's one more thing I want to mention. We have an opportunity to see that relative truth is relative truth as a Dharma practitioner, because it's in our face. It's, one person sees an apple, the other sees an orange. What is it? As Buddhists, as Dharma practitioners, hey, that person wants to relate to it like that, fine. We need to actually start to see the open nature of things. And then, of course, we figure out in the relative truth what is going to have more skillful means or compassion in action or a compassionate approach. And that's not a singular thing. That can be a variety of things, right? Compassion is not it's not like if you, in the Buddhist dictionary, if you look up what is compassion in action, it's like, oh my God, that can be, that can be so many different things. So it has to be driven by wisdom. And that wisdom is seeing the openness of truth and the changing nature of it and the malleability and learning to flow and dance in that. The relative truth is for dancing. It's not for grasping, right? So that was the thing I wanted to say about that I forgot. As Dharma practitioners, we have finally an opportunity. Wow, the world is showing us exactly what it is. The mind is showing us what it is. I'm not saying we didn't have that opportunity before. It's just like it's very strong, I think, in our face. And so we should grab it and use it as a teaching. And then, like I said, use it also as a way to work with fear, compassion practice, letting the heart break open but not break down, and find resilience. The resilience will come out of that. So yeah, I'll leave it here. As always, I welcome your feedback. I welcome your comments. I don't usually make content like this, but I just decided I think we have an opportunity here, and that opportunity can take us to another level as a species, or it can break us down further. And I would prefer to feed the bringing us to another level of compassion and connection. And I firmly believe, based on personal experience, this has to come from the inside out. So we have our work to do, So yeah, thanks so much, and see you again.